Matthew 24:6-10. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes, in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Matthew 24:11-15. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because the transgression of the Torah shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this Besorah of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso reads, let him understand.
Every year, Congress passes the National Defense Authorization Act. The bill sets policy for the Department of Defense and guides the military and national security funding for the next fiscal year. The House and Senate propose their own versions of the bill. Both chambers then negotiate and pass a compromise version, which then heads to the president's desk.
The bill is passed without objection. A motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
On June 14th, the House approved its version of the bill, and the Senate version of the bill advanced out of committee. It will head to the Senate floor for a vote this summer. Recently, several social media posts claimed the House's version of the bill would automatically register men aged 18 to 26 for the military draft, while other people claimed the Senate's version would require women to register for the draft. Multiple Verify readers, including Jean, want to know what the National Defense Authorization Act says about the draft. So, using these sources, we're answering a few questions about the bill. First up, does the House bill include a provision that would automate selective service registration for men? Although the last draft ended over 50 years ago in 1973, a federal law known as the Military Selective Service Act still requires most males aged 18 to 26 who are citizens or residents of the United States to register with the Selective Service. Right now, almost all Selective Service registrations are completed electronically, submitted via paper registration, or completed at the U.S. Post Office. The House version of the National Defense Authorization Act would amend the Military Selective Service Act to automatically register eligible men who are U.S. citizens or permanent residents between the ages of 18 and 26 nationally, meaning young men would no longer have to take any action in order to register. The provision is not included in the proposed Senate version of the bill. So yes, the House version of the bill does propose automating selective service registration for eligible men. Next, is there a proposal to register women for the draft? This year's House version of the National Defense Authorization Act does not include any provisions that require women to register, but the Senate version does. This provision faces an uphill battle to be included in the final version of the bill, as several Republican lawmakers have expressed their disapproval. With your Verify.
Mass some 41,000 troops on the Lebanese border, accompanied by hundreds of tanks, over 3/4 of its active tank force, and dozens of artillery pieces. Now, it says it's conducting what are called limited incursions, limited raids. And raids obviously are time sensitive. You go in, you destroy what you have to destroy, and you leave. Now, they have a unit there, the 98th Division, which is a parachute division, paratroopers, elite troops who have been getting real-time battle experience over the last year, fighting a hard fight in Gaza against Hamas fighters. But this time the war is going to be different. This time the fighting is going to be different. This time it's going to be against Hezbollah troops that are being training for this exact scenario in open, rocky, hilly terrain that favors defensive, that favors Hezbollah. And this is going to be a real issue. How far will Hezbollah fight, or will it just pull back? Israel says it needs to establish a buffer zone to stop rocket attacks from hitting Israel, but many of the missiles and rockets within Hezbollah's arsenal can be launched from just about anywhere in Lebanon and still hit targets within Israel. So how deep does this buffer zone actually have to be? And any limited raids conducted, what would they actually achieve? Now, Hezbollah's leadership is being decapitated, but it also operates on a semi-centralized, a decentralized command structure. Its middle-ranking troops know exactly what to do and have the experience to do it. Its special forces group, the Radwan force, numbering some 3,000 highly trained fighters, have been trained to operate exactly in this area in southern Lebanon. So what we don't know is the level of the fighting, and what we don't know is just how hard Hezbollah is fighting back.
Revealed. There's quite a few things happening right now surrounding this subject of the revealing of the Jewish Messiah. That's what I'm going to get into in this video. I'll cover a rabbi who says he's currently in conversations with the Messiah, then some Talmud prophecies that say that the Jewish Messiah is coming this year, and the Russian-Ukraine war proves that, and lastly, a candidate that looks like he's gaining prominence in Israel that points to him potentially rising to the level of prominence that we will need to see to fulfill the prophecies of the false prophet and the Antichrist. First, I'm going to get into the rabbi who claims that he is talking and holding meetings with the Messiah already. This is from Israel Today, and the article says Israeli rabbi says he's already holding meetings with the Messiah. I'll read a little bit from this article and then get into the Talmud prophecies. A recent interview on Israeli radio featured prominent rabbis explaining that the Messiah is just about to reveal himself. Rabbi Yaakov Zischoltz told Religious Broadcast Radio 2000 that Rabbi Chaim Kanivsky, who passed away earlier this year, had told him that Kanivsky was already in direct contact with the Messiah. To understand why religious Jews are taking this seriously, it's important to know that Rabbi Chaim Kanivsky was considered one of the 2 or 3 top rabbis in the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community in Israel. The article also says that Rabbi Zischoltz says that Kanivsky and others of the mystical concealed rabbis had tasked him with informing the public of the Messiah's imminent arrival. A few mentions within the article about what point to their belief that the Messiah is coming. One is it says Rabbi Cook responded that when the Messiah arrives, the Sea of Galilee will be full. In a few weeks, the Sea of Galilee will be full for the first time since Rabbi Cook made this statement. Lastly, it says that a few rabbis from decades ago and some of Israel's most revered sages both predicted that Benjamin Netanyahu would be the state of Israel's last prime minister prior to the Messianic age. A great many, if not most, of the Orthodox Jews in Israel continue to believe that to be true, as Israel's last round of elections near November 1st of 2022, Netanyahu again looks poised for victory. So as we see many of the Jewish people's, the Orthodox Jewish people's beliefs of the coming Messiah are not just taken from what we Christians is a central text of rabbinical Judaism, and it's a primary source of religious law in Jewish theology. On March 31st, 2022, an article from Israel 365 News says Talmudic prophecy reveals Russia-Ukraine war indicates Messiah's arrival as early as 2022. I'll read the most important parts of this article that point to what the rabbi is claiming here, and it says that the rabbi explains that the nation of Israel will experience redemption in the 7th year of the sabbatical year, which we are in right now. Furthermore, the rabbi adds that the war in Ukraine is happening in the months that are associated with redemption, Adar, which the Jewish people celebrate their redemption from the destruction during the holiday of Purim and Nisan in March and April, where the Jewish people celebrate the redemption from Egypt on the holiday of Passover. The Talmud says that the Jewish people will be redeemed in the 7th year in the sabbatical year. Not only are we in the sabbatical year, but we are in the 3 months of the year that are really geared for redemption. That's 2 months of Adar, where the redemption of Purim occurred, and the following month of Nisan, where the redemption of Passover, leaving Egypt, occurred. Rabbi Richer explains that the Talmud prophesies wars in the 7th year, and in the 8th year, the Messiah will arrive. The Tractate of Derek Zuda, in the 10th chapter, the first law, it says that there will be wars during the 7th year, specifically at the end of the 7th year. At the beginning of the 8th year, the Messiah of David will come to redeem the Jewish people, the Mashiach, the son of David. The rabbi explains that when the wars end in the 7th year, the Messiah, a descendant of David, arrives in the 8th year, September 2022, to September 2023. Here's the last quote of this article. It says that in the 7th year there are wars, and that represents the beginning of redemption, and then the Messiah comes. On the eve of the 7th year, so most of the commentaries say that there are, of course, 2 Messiahs. There's the Messiah, the son of Joseph, who fights the battles, who's the physical side of the redemption of the Jewish people, and that happens during the 7th year, wars, etc. And then after the 7th year is over, the beginning of the 8th year, that is the Messiah of David. That's the first time that I've ever heard a reference to the Jewish people expecting or believing in 2 coming Messiahs, but isn't that interesting with what we know from Bible prophecy of the Antichrist and the false prophet? Also worth noting, another rabbi claims in his book, Elim, when you see the nations inciting one another, challenging one another, threatening one another, be prepared for Mashiach. Very similar to what we hear and what we know from the words of
So as you noticed in the video, they said it would be September 2023, their Messiah would show up and stop the fighting. Well, think about it. It is now October 2024. The reason that they have not stopped the violence and the fighting is because now they have to push to stop the war in Lebanon so they could say that their Messiah has come and stop all of this. It is all a plan to do what they want to do to justify their scriptures.
Just before Iran fired on Israel, I spoke with Lebanon's Foreign Minister, Abdullah Abu Habib, who's in Washington to meet with American officials, and he joined us for his first interview since the latest escalations. Foreign Minister, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Things have reached a major crisis in your country since we last spoke. And I want to ask you, you are in the United States right now. You know that several of the administration officials agree with Israel's, ground incursion into your country. What do you make of that as you're in Washington trying to get support for a ceasefire?
Well, they also agreed on the Biden Macron statement that calls for a ceasefire, and that calls also the implementation for 21 days ceasefire, and then Mr. Hochstein would go to Lebanon and negotiate a ceasefire. Okay, and they told us that Mr. Netanyahu agreed on this, and so we also got the agreement of Hezbollah on that. And you know what happened since then? That was the day we saw you in New York.
I know, and you were talking about going into the Security Council for this ceasefire, and barely 24 hours later, the head of Hezbollah was assassinated. Are you saying Hassan Nasrallah had agreed to a ceasefire just moments before he was assassinated?
He agreed, yes. We agreed completely. Lebanon agreed to ceasefire, but consulting with the Hezbollah, the speaker, Mr. Berry, consulted with Hezbollah, and we informed the Americans and the French that what happened. And they told us that Mr. Netanyahu also agreed on the statement that was issued by both presidents.
Okay, well, as you know, Mr. Netanyahu was also in New York at the time, and he actually said publicly the IDF must fight on. And then he ordered the assassination and the targeting of that headquarters, which killed Nasrallah. So, given all of that, I mean, who do you have any faith in if the strongest country in the world, the United States, seems to have no or very little influence after publicly saying that there would be a ceasefire?
I don't think we have an alternative. Yes. I don't think we have an alternative. We need the United States help. Whether we get it or not, we are not sure yet. But the United States is very important, vital for this ceasefire. If it has to happen, the United States is always important in this regard.
So what do you make then of the United States' latest warnings to the region and now publicly that they have intelligence that Iran is preparing an imminent ballistic missile attack on Israel? What will that do for the situation?
Well, we always warned against a regional war. that will draw United States into it. And we thought that what Israel did would produce that. Until now, nothing had happened, but the issue is that that's what I hear. We didn't hear it directly from the Iranian, but that's what we hear from the news today. What you said about Iran ballistic missiles fired to Israel or to be fired.
So my question to you is, because others have said this, I want to know whether you agree that Benjamin Netanyahu has succeeded in creating the kind of dynamic that he wants on the ground and in the air, and could possibly succeed in getting the United States to help Israel strike Iran. Do you think that is what's going to happen next if Iran strikes Israel?
Well, he succeeded definitely. He came the next day after the announcement of the Americans and the French on the ceasefire. He came the next day, and his ministers were saying, no, we don't agree, but he didn't say anything. And when he came, after he spoke at the United Nations General Assembly, he gave an order to hit the Hezbollah in southern Beirut. I'm afraid that the United States is going to help Israel. They have said it many times, and God knows what would happen. Really, Christian, I don't know what's going to happen. That's what we are afraid of.
Israel says it's launched a ground invasion in southern Lebanon. Here's everything we know so far. Israeli authorities claim these are limited and targeted raids aimed at pushing Hezbollah back and stopping the group firing into Israel, which it's been consistently doing since last October.
Hezbollah turned Lebanese villages next to Israeli villages into military bases, all ready for an attack on Israel. Hezbollah had prepared to use those villages as staging grounds for an October 7th style invasion into Israeli homes.
But both Hezbollah and the UN peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon have denied that Israeli troops have so far crossed the border. Elsewhere, Israeli airstrikes continue. Here in the Lebanese capital, Beirut, civilians had been warned to evacuate some buildings. The attacks followed just minutes later. Further south in Sidon, a Palestinian refugee camp was targeted. This was the home of a senior member of the Palestinian group Fatah. His son, daughter-in-law, another woman, and 3 children were reportedly killed.
الرد إنه كلياتنا نكون يد وحدة وكون عندنا وحدة وطنية بكل الفصائل بما فيهن حماس وفتح وكل الفصائل الفلسطينية. بهاي الوحدة من نثبت للعدو الصهيوني إنه إحنا فلسطينيين وبدنا فلسطين ورح نرجع فلسطين.
Israeli strikes have already killed more than 1,000 people in 2 weeks, including the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, which escalated the conflict. And over 1 million people have been displaced in a population of 5 million. In central Israel today, the sound of sirens and interceptor explosions. Hezbollah said it targeted the headquarters of Israel's Mossad intelligence agency. It appears at least one rocket got through Israeli defenses, hitting a highway to the east of Tel Aviv. One man was wounded in the blast. Soon after, the Israeli army warned residents of dozens of villages in southern Lebanon to evacuate, saying anyone close to Hezbollah fighters or installations was in danger. They'll join the 60,000 Israelis who've had to evacuate from the north of the country since last October to protect them from Hezbollah attacks. It all marks a new and far more dangerous phase of this near year-long conflict and heaps further turmoil on Lebanon, a country crippled by economic and political crises in recent years.
Matthew 24:3-6. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the Talmudim came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of your coming, and of the end of the world? And Yahushua answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceives you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Mashiach, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet.
So I'm just showing you all these things to let you know the end and judgment is coming, but you still have time to get it right.
And whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear you, when ye depart thence, shake off the dust under your feet for a testimony against them. Verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for Sodom and Amorah in the day of judgment than for that city. Mark 6:11 Sefer.
Your face